Open up your mind to the way, the conscious way, the way of conscious mindfulness. Hey, Sifu Boggie here once again, and welcome to the Way of Conscious Mindfulness. So firstly, let's move that back over. So firstly, what is this show all about, and who the heck am I? Well, my name is Sifu Boggie. Sifu means guide, muse, somebody who points you along the way, who helps you along your path. Boggie is my healing name, is my martial art name, and is my spiritual name. And it means a balancer between the chaos and the calmness. So for the last 37 years, I've been studying Qigong, Tai Chi, Chinese massage, Tuina, Tita, 5-element cooking, and many other Eastern and Daoist philosophies in the guises of the barefoot doctor and the dragon dog shaman. And my goal is to help healers, coaches, and light workers supercharge themselves and to ensure that they never burn out. So what's this show all about? Well, this show is called The Way of Conscious Mindfulness, and it is a regular weekly show discussing spirituality and science, balancing health and well-being with mind, body, and spirit with a Daoist twist. What does the Dao mean? The Dao means the way, the path, the balance. Now, surprise, surprise, this isn't a normal show. Anything with me in it ain't normal. Each week, we either have a subject or a guest. Now, tonight, we have a powerhouse guest, and we also have a powerhouse co-host, which we'll talk about in a second. So, our goal is to have an open discussion to help us all find new techniques, new skills, new ways to enhance and empower our very own personal path, way, or Tao. Now, firstly, I'll introduce the co-host. Well, she has already co-hosted 2 shows before, and just recently she actually guest in her own show. We had our own show. So it is the wonderful, it is the lovely, it is the great, supreme Emily Harrison. Good evening, CQE. How are you doing?
Thank you. The great and supreme. I love it. I am definitely settling more and more into that. Thank you very much. I know that as we all go through this process, we have to really hold each other up as being masters in this space. So I receive that from you. And thank you, my friend. And also hold that space for you. What you've accomplished here today, my friend, is a little masterful work. I couldn't be more excited, more honored to sit next to you, more proud of you as an affiliate and a colleague of mine and someone here building the Academy. I know we're not actually broadcasting on the Academy. I forget. I think everything's on the Academy. Sorry.
I know. It's all right. It's all good. I don't mind. You know, the Way of Conscious Mindfulness is sort of like,
I'm gonna go share
if I could fit it into half an hour, I would do a show on the Way of Conscious Mindfulness.
Oh, that's right, because Nick cracks the whip, doesn't he? Nick is like half an hour only. And if you go over... Yeah, and trust me, I'm giving him any reason in our show. I keep running a little bit. I'm
bad boy Boggie. I'm lucky if I keep to 30 minutes. I'm lucky if I keep to 30 hours, let alone 30 minutes. But anyway, let's talk more. Let's bring on the man himself. I've actually known him. I used to actually do events every 2 years. He comes to the UK and he does these events with a friend of mine, Carl Vialli, and about 8 years ago, 10 years ago, when Kyle started doing them, I actually helped him run these events. But it was just the last one that me and the Mighty Wolf actually clicked, and we had a great conversation and great chat. So let's bring the mighty man up here. So 3, 2, 1. Good evening, Mr. Wolf. How are you doing?
I am doing the best ever. Just out of the mountains here in Humboldt County. Some of our viewers are familiar with the legends and lore of this county. And this morning I was up on a road where we did photograph a Bigfoot print the other day. This is Bigfoot Central, and I'm down at a really cool school right in Eureka, actually, currently, where they teach you blacksmithing
Love it. Yes. It's like when my kids go to school here. They learn blacksmithing. So amazing.
And yeah, it's a great art. It's the old alchemy, it's part of the old alchemical. I know the Mighty Wolf is it's one of his things, so we'll talk about it in a moment. But first, actually, I'm sort of springing this onto you because I forgot to actually mention it when we were off air. But there's a question. There's a question. Emily knows this question. I have this question, and it's the question I ask. I think you're something like 138, my 138th guest that I had in the last like couple of years. And there's a question, and the question is this. So this is your show. This is The Way of David Wolfe. So David, what is your way? What is your personal Tao?
My personal Tao is called the Holy Flow. And I picked that term up from my neighbor, actually, who just recently passed. And it was very interesting. I got to actually go there. It was very interesting. There's a very interesting thing about death, and that is I got to go be with his body after he passed. And I think that's a very important thing when someone leaves this earth, that you get to be, especially if they die of natural causes, which he did, right there on his spring. And he lived on a spring right next door to my house. It takes about an hour to walk there and probably 20 minutes to drive there, but it's actually quite close. It's just rugged terrain between us. And he gave that term to me, gifted that to me, the Holy Flow. So that is my personal Tao.
Cool. And what does that mean for you? Let's go a little bit deeper into that. What does that mean to you, your Holy Tao? It's
a balance between goal setting and being in the flow. So, you got to know where you're going. You get on a ship, you got to know where you're going, but there can be things that happen, synchronicities, coincidences that tell you to do something else. So you got to follow those too. You can't be too heady to not follow your heart, right? You can't be so overwhelmingly in your head that your heart is misguided. So I will tend to defer to the flow if our passage is taking us to a direction that's like we're fighting against too much onrushing wind. And so we'll change our tactics and we'll tack against the wind to get to the location using the Holy Flow.
Cool, awesome. So for you, I'll do one more question, then it's over to you, Sifu.
Okay.
So where did this start for you? Where did this journey begin for you?
Well, I think I've always been. It's interesting. One of the things that I'm very strongly involved in is planting, renegade planting. I run a nonprofit organization that's about to leave to Uganda this week, planting 60,000 fruit, nut, and medicinal trees. Since I founded that organization in 2002, we planted over 1 million trees on Earth. And that's a big part of it for me. Now, that started for me when I was 5 years old. I was a renegade planter. Even in my neighborhood as a little kid, I used to get baby pine trees and go plant them in people's yards. They didn't even know. And that's where it all started. And then when I was about probably 23, there's an old saying from On the Road, Jack Kerouac's famous book. It says, people who don't listen to a vision are damn fools. And one night I had a vision for my life as what I was going to do. And that's where it started, really. And that was that was in the summer of 1994. And I've been going ever since. That's 25 years ago now. So that's where my career started. Very quickly thereafter, I was doing lectures in front of my little entrepreneur group, and that was 100 people. And it just grew from there. And it's just been a joy ever since. And whether there's 5 people there or 1,000 people or 4,000 or 10, or it doesn't matter to me. I just really enjoy presenting and always love that direct personal connection.
That's what I love about you is through the years of doing the events, it never mattered how many people were there, and the stuff I've seen of you, and like the live ones as well. It's never mattered. You're as enthusiastic whether you got 3 people there or 300. You're always the same, and that's what's so cool.
Right on, thank you. I'm so glad you appreciate that, because it's just that to me sometimes the bigger events aren't as fun. There seems to be I love doing the events when we do the events at people's homes back in the old days, 50 people in a room in their living room, or I'd sneak into a healing center and do a lecture inside one of the hotel rooms. I'm thinking of Optimum Health Institute back in the day, and San Diego, California, and I used to jump the fence and sneak in there, and they'd be like, "Okay, what do you tell us what your whole trip is?" Then there'd be like 20 people who'd be crammed in that room. Those were as fun as anything, and I think that's by the way a very strong barometer for the Holy Flow is like, where's your joy, where's your fun?
Yeah.
Over to you.
Is it my turn?
Sifu?
All right. Well, I have to give you huge telepathy points because you've already answered 2 of the questions that were written down. Well, you've hinted on them a little bit. I might have you dive in a little bit deeper. I was going to ask you, tell us a story from your childhood, and you already started in with that just broke my heart and soul a little wider open. Being a little boy planting pine trees in people's yards, like the little mystery pine planter. That's awesome. I want to know a little bit more. Like, elaborate just a little bit more so we can get to know you a little deeper.
Okay, well, that began, I think I believe in karma and reincarnation, and that it began, it's a very deep part of my being. I'm a renegade planter, always have been, always will be. My goal is to plant 18 billion trees on the earth before I'm out of here. And we have already massively terraformed the big island of Hawaii and many of the Hawaiian islands, Maui and Kauai,
Wow.
but mainly Big Island. We've introduced species like durian onto the Big Island. It will never leave the Big Island after my life has gone through, that there will be an effect on the Big Island's ecosystem of fruit, nut, and medicinal trees from my life that will go on, throughout all the history of the world. And that to me is a very important part of my being. It just is.
Like you say that word terraform, and there's so much power and knowledge and insight and understanding that comes in. For those of our audience out here who are like trying to be real smart and they're like, okay, I'm not exactly, maybe you've heard of terraforming before in terms of Mars, us going to Mars, trying to create an ecosystem or an environment there that's sustainable. But just quickly share how powerful the understanding is of how we can change our environment by what we're planting. Because I don't know that we fully have engaged in that yet.
It's probably, the Daoists were onto it. All ancient farming systems were onto it. And today we call it permaculture. We gave it a name. We had to kind of westernize it. And Rudolf Steiner was onto it with his biodynamic farming. And basically what you're trying to do is set up an environment around you where it's easy to live and you produce food kind of automatically. And what I wanted to do with the Big Island and all the Hawaiian island chain was get the species in there that would make it easy for people to live in the future with an abundance of fruit, abundance of medicinal trees, and abundance of edible trees. There's quite a few edible trees out there. And as long as we're going to plant trees, it might as be be useful to us. And that's what we've been doing. And it's, people say, does that disturb the ecosystem? Listen, the Hawaiians already disturbed the ecosystem there when they introduced, 50 species of bananas, for example, from Polynesia, and brought in kukui trees and brought in noni trees and brought in the 50 different types of flowering plants that they grew just for the flowers, and many other species that they brought there, including sugarcane, etc. So all we're doing is we're just rounding out the picture. So future Hawaiians and people that visit that place will have access to these amazing cornucopia of choices, because I do believe that actually at some point, civilizations rise and fall, and one day our civilization will fall, and those people in Hawaii and all over the world will be left where they are, kind of like it was in the old days. You couldn't travel very far because you were on foot. And I want to make sure they got food over there, because I love Hawaii and I love farming in Hawaii, and I've lived in Hawaii for 14 years.
That is beautiful. I love that you talked about the blacksmithing and what kids were learning. Kids need to learn this too, and it's not brought into every school yet. The place where my kids go to school here in the magical forest in Lake Tahoe, they actually are an expedition school where they travel and they go dive in, and they just went to Hawaii to learn about this kind of sustainable farming and terraforming and the things that you guys are doing. So thank you for leaving your legacy to my children, specifically my children.
Awesome.
And the children of the entire world, because it's magical. It's
key too. The relationship that you have with kids about this really becomes much more important as time goes on. And I love being that person who kind of inspires kids, like, hey, that's a plum tree there. That's a pear tree. That's an apple tree. And just points out things that we might not think are going to be impactful, but very few adults are pointing that out to kids. And
because we don't all know it,
right? And
we're so caught up. Yeah, we're so caught up in the 3D, making sure that we're making enough money to pay the bills to keep the lights on, which is a bunch of bullshit. Anyway, I'm sorry, I speak French, David, in case you didn't know. I'll speak it on the air too. That the parents don't know either. So it's a really beautiful time for us all to be learning and growing and to really get curious about the power that we can step into.
And one of the most powerful powers that we have is the way we walk on the earth moment to moment with, lots of intention in everything that we do. And so that's one of the things over the years of studying Taoism, studying Rudolf Steiner, studying Victor Schauberger, studying the systems of spirituality all over the world. It's really about intention and bringing that intention into every moment. What's the intention? What's the power of your intention? And then directing that intention with love. And that's one of the things I was talking with Boggie about. Sifu Boggie, that guy's the best ever.
I love him.
We had a wonderful talk about, the treasures of Taoism, like Shen, this auric power, spiritual power, Jing, which is your primordial life force, and Qi, which is the way you mobilize energy day to day, moment to moment. And when you build the power of those three up, then you start to go, here's what my intention is, and you put love behind it. Boom, you have will. You can accomplish things. You can generate changes in the world through will.
Yes, very small movement, big impact. You become superhuman. Right? So speaking of superhuman, let's flip it. Obviously, you command a lot of divine masculine energy here. When do you feel the most human and you're just like, fuck, help me?
Oh, I mean, the most human I feel is whenever I jump into ice cold water. Like this morning, I rolled out of a warm bed this morning and I'm with a friend of mine here and she's like, we got to go. I got to get my kid to school. We got to do this. And I was like, okay, boom, we're going. And so I was like, meet me down the road. So I threw my stuff in the truck and I ran down the road and jumped into a river.
You went polar bearing. And that's when I feel the most human for sure. It strips everything away. All the emotional stuff, all exhilarating and vulnerable.
Thoughts. Yeah, it brings you into the moment, right? Because that's the most human experience. It's just you're right here, you're right now. And all the other stuff goes away because that's the power of cold water. And that's one of the reasons why I've been stuck on that for 20 years, the jumping in ice cold water business.
It can be a little addictive. For those of you guys who don't like to get quite so cold, you can do that also with smell and essential oils, by the way, because smell is something that brings you it's not quite as visceral as going polar bearing. But it does the same thing.
The mighty Wim Hof, he's brought it to the forefront. But as David knows, the Daoists, it's called fire breathing. They were doing it. I mean, I was in China with some Daoist and Buddhist monks, and they would sit there like it's like -15, -20, and they'd sit there with wet towels, and they'd be putting a wet towel on you, and you had to heat it up and dry it. And after 5 minutes, I partly dried this towel and thought I was pretty cool. And the guy next to me was on towel number 3, and the steam's like piling off. And it's like, oh yes, Boggie humility time. It's like, and it's that one, but it's So these abilities, and I was just actually studying something today that's actually saying that there's this fat that's in the body that actually there's a system in the body that actually breaks down fat. It goes back from the childhood, but it works best in the cold. So when you're actually in that cold area, it actually breaks down the body fat. So you can actually maintain a body weight through this cold, through the cold scenario. And like when you see Wim Hof stuff, you don't have to sit at a frozen lake and dry wet towels. You can just have that cold shower and just get used to bringing yourself into that cold shower. Like once every couple of days, once a week, and then from that once a week, reducing it down to every single day. And it is a sort of a gift. It is. The Wim Hof on his Christmas video says, I have a Christmas present every single day, every time I give myself a cold bath, an iced bath, because it increases the immune system. And that's what the Taoists said. One of the key principles of that was to actually increase the immune system within the body. But like I say, you don't have to go to the extreme. There are ways of having a similar version to that.
You mean like jumping walls behind the hotel lines and sneaking into to rooms. You don't you don't have to be quite that intense like our friend here today. I love it.
So
I have one more question, and then I will shut my mouth. Which is the hardest things for me to do. David, what has your curiosity right now? What topic is inviting you? You're just like, wow, I want to learn more about that. It's pulling me in. What are you excited to learn right now?
What I've been on to lately, and this is deep stuff. This is it really brings us back to Taoism. I know the Taoist masters were onto this, are onto this, and had been onto this. Same with the great yogis, probably the greatest longevity groups in the world, from the high Andes to the Himalayas to, the group in China, essentially had this idea that black foods and black substances can extend life. The most obvious of the black foods and black substances is charcoal. So I am in the process of writing a book on charcoal right now, the research of which will shock the world. This is a shocker. Charcoal for 70 years in animal research on rodents, research on worms, research on every type of living animal, all the way to humans, extends life and improves quality of life. It is number one in that department of anything. Such a shocking statement of all things. Look at that right there. He's got it. Chaga King. They got their brand. That's birch charcoal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, that's
I'm still getting it because I used to know it from China, but last year, well, I would say last year, the last time you were here, it was there, and I've been buying it ever since. So it's one of the things that I do as part of my sort of what I call my mineral diet. So it keeps up. But you explain it. I'll let you do it.
It's an interesting phenomenon. Charcoal is considered an adsorptive substance. So this is interesting because the myth around charcoal is that it absorbs healthy nutrients, vitamins, minerals, macronutrients like protein, carbohydrates, oils, and it does not. It does not in metabolism, nor does it interfere with healthy nutrients. There's been no evidence of that, even though that's been tested for 70 years. So now I can pretty much say conclusively charcoal does not interfere at all with healthy metabolism or digestion or nutrients. It only helps. Now, out of the entire litany of things we could ingest, if I had to go to one thing out of anything, like in terms of a supplement thing I would take with me to a desert island or whatever, it's charcoal without question.
Wow.
Charcoal, birch charcoal, like what Sifu Boggie has, activated charcoal, and then the super charcoals, the fullerenes. This is the greatest longevity discovery in human history, and this is something that the great masters were onto. They knew about it, of course. I read through the Icelandic sagas. It's there. It is there. The yogis were onto it. It's in their literature too. And when you put the pieces together, you go, oh yeah, the Taoists, of course, black substances and longevity. They knew.
Sure.
And so all we're redoing, by the way, is just bringing back those things that have always been here. And there's nothing new under the sun.
You know where else there's a ton of information about this?
Where?
The Akashic Records.
You go, Gil.
How about we connect after this, and I can show you a little bit of what I do, a little bit of magic, and maybe bring some extra special opening up to knowledge for you, so you can bring in that power for us. Deal?
Deal. Emily, you're so cute.
Thank you.
I think I've got to make a trip up to Lake Tahoe at some point. Are you on the North Shore, or are you in Nevada side, California side? Which side are you on?
We're right there on the border, and yes, I have people here that would be very, very talking about the school that my husband is actually the the admissions director at this school. It's called Tahoe Expedition Academy. Okay. They're affiliated with some big people, and they have some big things going on right now, just in terms of pushing kids to that, pushing them outside their comfort zone and getting them. They teach kids about immigration by taking them down to the border and waking them up in the middle of the night and doing a 10-mile dark and silent hike back after they've interviewed the families, after they've interviewed the border agents, so that the people, they can actually experience what this is like.
Cool.
And yes, these kind of blueprints are all over my world. I would love to bring you into it, my friend.
Let's talk about that for a second, because I grew up on the border between San Diego and Mexico.
Yes.
And in 1978, a family came across the desert and ended up at my uncle's house, and they're still there after all those years. And I grew up with Mexican TV because we couldn't get any like American stations there. And so we grew up with Raul Velasco and some of the great superstars of Latin television. And that was a big part of who I am today, because essentially, it's one of the things that makes you a Californian is you grow up with Mexican people. You're connected to Mexican culture, Mexican food, Mexican history, which means Aztec, Toltec, Mayan, all the above. And that became later in my life, a big part of my life, hence the name David Avocado Wolfe, because back in 1978, we did plant avocado trees for the first time there on that farm. And that's how long I've been growing avocados, which is now 41 years.
That's my mama in the house. She's like, I want to come visit when he comes. So, okay. You've got family here to visit. Okay.
Nice. I did all our winter vacations, by the way, were in Lake Tahoe as a kid. So you're speaking my language. When you say Lake Tahoe, you're like, oh yeah, I'm Heavenly. We went to Heavenly Mountain. We'd stay at Caesar's Tahoe, go to Heavenly Mountain every winter vacation for, 8 years.
Nice. All right. I'll be quiet.
No worries. I've got one extra co that's been patiently waiting. She's actually one of the co's from shows in the past. So I'll quickly bring on the wonderful Marilyn Devonish. Good evening, Marilyn. How are you doing?
Good evening. I know you can see me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
We can hear you. Yes. Oh, there you are. We can see you now. Hi.
Hi.
It's like Celebrity Squares now. We've each got our own little box. So Marilyn, if you quickly explain who you are, and then I know you are the questioner. You are the female questioner of the Way of Conscious Mindfulness. So I'm sure you've already got something waiting in the background, in the wings for us. So explain say who you are, and then ask your question.
Well, Marilyn Devonish here, and one of the things, I came in at the bit where David was talking about the Big Island, because of course that's where I went out and studied Huna, and so I was like, oh yeah, this sounds good. And I think I'm just going to go in with the first question. Maybe as we talk, I'll share more about myself, but it's not my show. David was talking about black food. I have a question about something that is pure white. And I'm really curious to know, because it's something I've been looking at recently. Do you have any thoughts about, or have you come across anything to do with turpentine?
Phenomenal. It's such a great question. I have done the Turpentine Cleanse, which is, you take the turpentine with the organic sugar cube and then dose it up and do more and more and more. And one of the things that hit me actually doing the Turpentine Cleanse is it was remarkably similar to frankincense. I mean, they are very chemically similar and taste the same. And so I started to, after a while, I started going, you know what? I think I'd rather do frankincense. Not that I'm against turpentine. I love turpentine. I love the Turpentine Cleanse, and it's a great one. It's one of the better ones out there at the moment. So I'm a fan and an advocate, and have done it. And I also recommend certain other quote unquote essential oils, because essentially turpentine is the essential oil of pine trees. And that became for me, doing the frankincense a little bit more. It kind of revived that for me. And I got frankincense. Where is it? It's on me somewhere right now. I'm thinking about, it's right over. Watch this.
I got some. I'll spray
watch
some
this.
too.
Here we go. It's never far, but the Turpentine Cleanse brought this all back to me. Here it is. Wait, right. Where is that? Let's see. Yep.
I got a little aggressive. I had to drive my screen off.
Let's see in here. Oh, jeez, where'd it go?
How many frankincense per screen? There we go.
Yeah, how many frankincense are in the room right now?
Yeah, mine's over there. I've got
boom, right there.
Can I ask you? Oh, brilliant. Fantastic. Yeah. Amazing. No, that's cool, because I've been reading about it, started looking at it more closely. You can hear some real horror stories about it online, which would just make you run away in fear. However, what I was looking at and what I've experienced thus far, I really think this is good stuff. And I guess that would lead me to my next question. When you hear people talking about plants and herbs and all of this stuff as, I think he might, has David disappeared there?
He's disappeared. I'll wait for him to come back. Here he is. He's coming back in 3, 2, 1. That was it. The second question, that was it. David ran. He's running for the hills.
Blew the circuits.
Go for it, Marilyn.
So my question was, when you hear people talking about, herbs and plants and, turpentine and frankincense and charcoal as alternative and new age and out there and different, what would you say to that, given that it's really taking us back to what the ancestors would have been doing naturally? How do you kind of explain that one? What do you say to that when people go, oh, I would rather take paracetamol, for example, than something that we would call alternative new age?
Okay, good question. And I grew up, so just so everybody knows this, I grew up with two parents who are medical doctors. I grew up in a medical doctor's office. I've seen it all. I used to go to trade shows with my dad. I've seen the whole pharmaceutical industry from the time I was born, inside out. That's why I have nothing to do with that world. My dad, by the way, he's 79. In his graduating class of medical school, of the 50 people, this is 2 years ago, so when he was 77, out of the 50 graduating class, only 17 were still alive. So doctors die young. That is true, by the way. And actually, 2 died just in the last couple of years. So now at 79, there's only 15 of them left. And so they're all around that age, 78, 79, 80. There's only 15 left, just a little FYI. So I grew up in that world. So to me, when I was 7 years old, I abandoned that world completely. I don't have anything to do with supporting that system or what it's about. I go back to the traditional systems of Taoism, the traditional systems of Ayurveda, traditional European folk herbalism, traditional African systems of medicine, going all the way back to the African continent, and the systems that were developed by the Maroons and other races of people who were left in the Americas. And from there, learned a lot. And that's my world. So, when it comes to like doing turpentine, I'm like, what? Let's get on it. Yeah, of course. Makes sense. Let's do it. And of course, the people who are the most natural and connected to the earth and least distracted by, civilization's vices would come up with the best systems of cure. And, hence, turpentine made sense to me. So immediately go for that. But all the different, aspects, when you start putting it together, I think can be collated probably best just by thinking about, okay, what's the next best step for me, right? Because each person watching right now is going, what do I do? And it's like, do the next thing that's best for you that you understand. Because trying to get people all the way back to foraging, wild mushrooms in the forest over here, at the first step that's a little bit much. So you just got to go, what makes sense for me and what is the next logical step? And then you develop a sophistication over time and you get momentum. And then that momentum makes it easier for you to do, anything. Like at this point now, like I'm about to go into a 2-week water. I'm going into 2 week on liquid, and then I'm going to go 10 days on water. That's not easy to begin with, but if you've been at it for a while, you just know, okay, I got to put myself through this system, and it gets easier. So again, do the next thing that makes sense to you.
I mean, for me, I want to really quickly say, one of the things I do almost as a standard, as a default, is I actually do the 8-16. So eat 8 hours a day, normally between about 8 o'clock up to about 4 or 5 o'clock, or 9 o'clock up to 4 or 5 o'clock, and then take the rest of the day. And even if you can do that, you allow your body to actually activate those ketones, and you actually allow your body to function far better. And that's, that alone, that and another Taoist thing is quite simple, of being selective with food, in the essence of, if you are still a meat eater, you're going to eat meat, eat at least 50% or more veg and meat. If you're going to eat grain, don't eat meat, eat veg and grain. If you're going to eat pasta, eat pasta and veg. Keeping the main bulk of your diet veg, but don't cross the things over, because every time you cross one of these certain food groups over, your body has to struggle with that. And that was one of the biggest things I learned in China when I have visited China, was that the that they tend to have, if they're going to eat rice, they'll have veg and rice. If they're going to eat meat, they'll have veg and meat. But they don't cross those things over, because what's now learned when you study like anatomy and physiology, you actually learn that the body, think of it as acid and alkaline. When you mix acid and alkaline together, you basically create grey mulch. And the point is like if you're mixing fruit with pasta, or fruit with this and fruit with that. So think of spaghetti bolognese. British spaghetti bolognese is meat, tomato sauce, and pasta. You're actually neutralizing the ingredients, and then your body has to work harder at breaking it down. So it's just understanding food in a sort of chemical, magical way. But that's my philosophy on it. What's your philosophy on it, David?
Well, I like that. I mean, I think you're right on. We call that the laws of proper food combining, which is making sure that we don't go too far off on the edge of this crazy mixing of everything together. So if you're having fruit, just have fruit only. Or you get up in the morning, it's like, don't eat anything. Actually, in the morning, what I really recommend is drinking lots of water and lots of charcoal in the morning. It's a great time when everything's empty. If you haven't eaten anything in 8, 12, 14 hours, right? And then you get that nice detox happening. And actually, on this part I was writing in my book just the other night, there's an interesting series of epigenetic markers that kick on when you get into autophagy, right? Which is AUTOPHAGY, which means self-eating. And that's the idea of intermittent fasting. It's also the idea of doing long periods of less food so your body can catch up and break down stuff that wasn't properly broken down. And interestingly, the charcoal and related compounds, so when I say that, I mean regular charcoal, activated charcoal, carbon 60, carbon 70, they activate the epigenetics that help your body to break down material that's not useful anymore, toxins that are floating around. So they not only help to suck up those toxins, but they also activate a genetic sequence that helps your body to break those things down and metabolize them or eliminate them. And that was very interesting. And really only recently, you'd think this would have been studied in depth at this point, but only very recently have we gotten to a point where people are really looking at these genetic triggers of autophagy, which, by the way, the easiest way to do that is just intermittent fasting or long periods without eating, and then less calories for long periods of time. Then it happens automatically.
Cool. Emily?
What? Are you asking another question?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
Emily, you're so
okay,
great.
So, okay, so when I was in Southern California, I had a massive garden, and I come from lineage where my granny was a gardener and my dad was a great gardener. For those people, and I would talk to people and they would be like, I don't feel like I have a green thumb. I'm terrible at that. So for those who don't feel like they're planters, those who haven't called in their ancient lineage to wake this up in them yet, what are simple things that we can do to begin to awaken our connection and natural knowledge? Because we all have this innately, right? And I feel like if we can give ourselves little bits, like you talked about the little bit next step, we can naturally awaken our own curiosity and knowledge. So how could we gift ourselves something little?
One of the best things ever it's called chaos gardening. You don't really have to know anything to garden. One of the best books I ever saw, I used to sell this book. It's called Gardening Without Digging. It's a classic. It's actually, in the UK, they love their gardens, as you know, Boggie. They are absolutely enamored of their gardens. And this guy had won championship after championship for his garden, and his book eventually was called Gardening Without Digging: How to Make Your Garden Abundant Without Having to Dig Up the Soil. Now, those two things together, chaos gardening and then the idea of like gardening without digging, really meant something to me. So I was like, hey, that sounds great. I'll just throw all my compost out in that corner, throw a bunch of compost over there, and we'll see what happens. And all of a sudden I had melons growing. Next thing you know, I had little baby trees coming. Next thing I know, I had certain types of plants coming up from a party that I had. And it just led from one thing to another. And then it got me into it. I was like, oh, I could do this because I'm more of a horticulturalist. I'm more of a tree grower. That's how I grew up, growing trees. And gardening, like lettuce and stuff like that, was always like, I don't know what to do on that. So gardening without digging is what worked.
Cool. I love it.
Throw everything on the ground, fake it till you make it, pretend like you know what you're doing.
Fake it till you make it shows up everywhere. I was an actress for 20 years before I transitioned into being an Akashic Records mentor. And we would always be in class with like a scene where you had to start crying in the scene and everybody's all tense and you can't cry. And our acting teacher would be like, fake it till it comes out. So I have seen so many uncomfortable moments on stage where my friends were faking that cry until then it starts to come though. And then you start to relax. And then you start to let the natural process of the character take over, just like what you're talking about here with allowing the natural process to take over.
Exactly. It really, this again, you're right on when you're saying it's an instinct. It's like we know these things. We know exactly where water comes out of a mountain. We know our instinct. There's things inside of us. Our cells are tracking the movement of stars. Our cells are tracking the moon. Our cells are tracking the sun. Our cells know what's going on more than just our consciousness. So instead of trying to overwhelm everything with mind, it's just allow your body's own intelligence to take over and guide you to where the source of springs are, to how to garden and farm, how to procure food, how to make like, for example, one of the big ones for me, it's a big one, is natural living and natural housing and natural shelter and how to deal with that. And this year I had about almost in my one corner of my house, in a very dangerous corner actually, because that's where the electricity is. I had about a half a meter thick of ice, and what it was happening is the water from the wood burning stove was going to obviously the heat rises, and the water was melting up at the top where the ice was, and it was running down the roof. But it was so cold there, it wasn't getting through that ice; it was too thick. And it was pooling behind that ice and then going into the room where the electricity comes into the house. So you can just imagine, like, okay, I got to think this through. And that kind of stuff, I call it cosmic plumbing.
Yes.
Understanding natural electricity, solar, how wind power works, how water likes to move is a very key part, I think, of developing, your full and complete, spectrum of knowledge. And it's intuitive, and it's something you already kind of know. So it's just, instead of trying to learn something, you're just tuning into natural processes, looking at nature different, having it teach you.
Beautiful.
I have loved this. I'm getting low on power, so if I cut out, I'll be gone. But I was
going to cut out real fast because I got to go pick up my kiddos from school. But thank you all very much, Boggie, Marilyn, David, all of you out there watching. Thank you very much, and go get them.
Yeah, that was great. You guys this has been such a great show, and thanks you guys for been so long in the making, Sifu Boggie. Thank you so much. But let's keep going until we get to the end. What do you think?
Okay, cool. If you're okay with that, we'll keep going to Marilyn. Have you got a question?
Well, you know me, always full of questions. Actually, taking in a completely different direction for a second, then I'll come back to the real question. One of the things that surprised me, David, I glanced at the biography that Sifu Boggie had put up this morning, and it was just a beautiful eclectic mix. And I looked at that and I thought, isn't that funny? Because I do about 20 different modalities: NLP, hypnosis, timeline therapy, soul plan reading, HUNA, DNA, theta healing, EFT, you name it, archetypal profiling, photo reading, I do it all. And awesome. One of the things that I've been told for so many years is you've really got a niche, you've really got to call yourself one thing. What's the one thing that defines you? And I read your bio and I'm like, here is a man who has not gone in the direction of, I'm just going to put myself into this box, which for the last 18 years, since I became a coach and therapist, I have not been able to do. So tell me a little bit more about your biography and how that came into being and how you blend these wonderful eclectic things.
Well, I think what you're doing is correct, and stay with it, because trying to get yourself into a single niche is against your nature, is what I can tell about you. So you cannot go against your nature, and that's the same for me. I can't go against my nature. And instead of that, because I've had people tell me the exact same thing. Even the NutriBullet crew, they're like, you need to narrow it down and just focus on this or just focus on that. It's like, that's not really who I am. I mean, maybe that's someone else, but it's not me. I can't do it. So I'd recommend sticking with that, it's an inner drive that you have that wants to learn and expand into different fields and different healing therapies, different levels of understanding. And you can't go against that. It's like, it's part of your nature. That's my advice. And that's been, I've tried both ways. It's impossible. I can't change my nature. It's just, I'm going to go with the broad spectrum.
that's what I've always said about, we've talked a couple of years ago. I said, you're Daoist. To me, you're Daoist because Dao means the balance, the path, and people, there's a thing in the UK they say like a jack of all trades, and it's like, yeah, but you look, you know how to tie your shoelaces, you know how to open doors, you know how to eat, you know how to, commerce, language, all these things, and that's the point. You're supposed to grow, you're supposed to enhance, you're supposed to be like this, you're supposed to find your own personal balance and find your Tao, and that's why us three all exist, because I was always taught everything you learn enhances everything else you do. And, I've seen, you, David, over the years expand and grow and you're always adding new stuff. And it's just like, it's like a good stew or, a good food, a good food. When you add lots of different things, you're adding or a good, good portrait, a good blanket, or a good song. Lots of different things can accumulate together. Now, yeah, if your Tao is one or two things, stick with that. But these two people next to me, our Tao is about lots of different blending things, but finding personal balance, and you do it really cool and really well, and that's what it's all about. It's finding your own personal way. But hey, what do I know?
You know a lot. Now, I'm a fan of synchronicity, have been since I learned about Jung when I was 18. And I came in also at the point where you were talking about intention and the Big Island. Oh, I think his power might have gone.
Anyway, well, we can talk about it. You carry on, sister. So
give him a minute, see if he gets his power back.
Yeah.
But it was that whole thing about, we've talked about the food and the practicality. So I was really kind of wanting to get into, because intention is really the whole thing about the energetic side of that, about the more spiritual, more esoteric side. So I was just kind of going to be interested in terms of, okay, we talked about the food and the growing and the practicalities. What are his thoughts on the esoterics? But we may not get a chance to ask that question.
I think he did say his battery was going. But what will happen? Me and David have talked. We are talking. He's coming into the UK in I think October time, and I'll be helping set that up. I'll actually be doing the event organisation for that. But we've already talked about doing another show, so we will set up another show. There was a little bit of a time factor this year because this show, because of the fact that we're still catching up with America. Well, here was actually expecting it to be an hour ago, so where he had a lot more power than he did now. I think he hasn't responded, so I've got a feeling he's died. He has gone.
We're out of juice.
It's out of juice. It is over with the wolf. Wolf has left the building. So, but is there anything else you wanted to quickly discuss, or before we sort of wrap it up? Is there anything else that you wanted to talk, or about this subject, about what you think or feel about food and nutrition and health and well-being?
I mean, I'm always, I think it's kind of where I started really, and I guess just to kind of the final thing I would say on that is I'm smiling to myself, and I sometimes think our ancestors are looking down on us and giggling and going, they finally rediscovered lavender. Oh, look, they found charcoal. Because when people shy away from these weird, out there, alternative, new age practices, I'm thinking, I don't think they're new age. I don't think they're alternative. I think they are the way of the earth. And we're rediscovering Mother Nature and the power that, I think of Mother Nature as she, the power that she has. And it's like it's all coming full circle. And there's a group of people who, number one, have known this since they were born, and they're the lucky ones who grew up in that. And there are those, I would say, us Westerners, I put myself in that category, who are now just rediscovering some of these natural ways and I kept, my parents and grandparents always use these kinds of things. They're from Barbados, so they could go and pick them from a tree. But I just think it's not new, it's not alternative, it's not out there. We're just coming full circle and using the wonderful bounty that Mother Nature has kind of put on this planet. So
Indeed. So, right, what I'll do then, I'll let everybody know. So these are the ways you can get hold of David. He'd already given me the links. So, and I've put them in the comments below. So you got obviously davidwolfe.com, which is his main website. So www.davidwolfe.com. You've also got www.thebestdayever, which is his quote, his famous quote. He's always said the best day ever, which is about different on there are different techniques, different things, different posts every single day about, you know, making it the best day ever, helping you expand and grow on a daily basis. And then finally, what he did mention in the show, he mentioned his new charity, which is www.ftpf.org. So it's ftpf.org. It is in the comments below if you wanted to find it. So they are the three main ways that you can get contact with the mighty wolf himself. I think, unless there's anything else you want to chat, I mean, we can talk afterwards, but I think we'll wrap it up show-wise.
I guess one thing I'm going to say, I have to smile. I was going to ask you about this as well when he talked about the epigenetics, because when I interviewed Greg Braden a couple of months ago, that's exactly what he talked. He's talking about the epigenetics. He's talking about the chromosomes. He's talking about the discoveries that are actually kind of ancient, but we're really only finding out about it now. And so that's a whole other conversation. So definitely make a mental note of that one. We've got to talk about that as well.
Well, I think I need to see if I can get hold of Greg and bring him on this show. I'd love to do that. And of course, well, as you're already best buddies with him, we'll have to bring you as the co-host. Because I remember you had a dinner with, well, there was a group of you, but you had a dinner once, if I remember rightly.
We've been out to dinner several. I mean, there's something called the TCCHE, the Conference for Consciousness and Human Evolution. So for the past couple of years, I've been the MC and the host for that event. And so I do the interviews. Before we all go on stage, I interview all the speakers. So Greg was one of those speakers, as you know, Bruce Lipton and those guys, Dr. Joe Dispenza, all of whom are on that whole epigenetics, kind of track. Then I'm interviewing all the speakers and doing all the, the introductions, etc. And so, Greg and I have become sort of friends. He's just such an incredible mind and the way that he thinks. And so when we talk, literally, sometimes we only get little segments over lunch or over dinner or, in the corridor or before an interview or something like that. But we always have a ton of stuff to talk about. And so we just said, man, we've just got to do an interview one day. And we have scheduled, I think, for an hour. And he's so busy. And then he said, Marilyn, if it's okay with you, can we go longer? I'm like, yes. He's like, I've loved this, Marilyn. Can we call this interview number 1 and do another interview or series? I'm like, totally. So, he's definitely, fascinating to speak to. Yeah. So, and I mean, he's not in the UK now, as far as I know, until he's back for the event in August this year. So I'll be back there again as the MC and host, and he's got a tight schedule, I will say that as well, but he would definitely be, great fun to come in and hang out and have a chat. So, yeah.
Oh, that'd be cool. That'd be, well, I might have to work some magic, on that. I know, as I put it on, Teresa Warren is on at the moment. She's from the Akashic Academy, and she's had some awesome, she seems to have the luck of the magic like me. She brings some really cool people on, and she said, yes, I've been trying to get hold of Greg Braden for my show as well. So Teresa, it looks like we've got a competition on our hands. Which one can get Greg first? So the competition is on. But so for everybody else, that's it. Unfortunately, the mighty wolf, his cell was dying, his phone was dying for us in the UK. And I always you said herbs, and he always says herbs. The old American. There's the old herb and herb, and normally. Because normally in on the masterclass before, he says herb, and you get me in the corner going herb. And there's a little bit of a joke between that. But I'm planning to have the Mighty Wolf on again, so I will let you guys know. for that in the future. So I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're interested in what I do, very quickly, I have I am on Sifu, who was on earlier, Emily Harrison. She is the Akashic Academy. On Wednesdays, I do a show with Robin McClendon, which is the Mother, the Dragon, and the Wu Chi, which I do Reiki empowerments. And she does an oracle card reading of her own creation, these oracle cards that she's created. Then there is the Way of the Dragon Dog Shaman. And also, very, very quickly, is my own actual website, which is www.sifuboggie.com. Marilyn, I haven't got it to put across the screen, but how can we get hold of you if we're interested in what you do?
In terms of me, it's / Marilyn Devonish, Marilyn Devonish, DEV for Victor, ONISH, and my website is transformationstm.com. That's TRANCE, as in a hypnotic trance, I'm a hypnotherapist as well. Formations, FORMATIONS, TM as in trademark, so www.transformationstm.com, and the email is marilyn@transformationstm.com. So for anything / Marilyn Devonish is where you will find me on social media, aside from Instagram, which is the Neuro Success Coach. But yeah, I'm around and fairly easy to find.
And what she'll also do is, Marilyn, afterwards, or, stick your links in the comments below if you're interested in getting hold of her. I'm sure she'll put those in for you as well. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed the show. Marilyn don't go just yet, but everybody else, I hope you enjoyed the show. Until next week, there is a show on Sunday. I can't remember who the guest is. I'm sorry, whoever you are. But there is a show on Sunday, and then there's a little bit of a gap because I've been sort of trying to have to set up new shows. So if you're interested in being a guest on the show, let us know, and we'll start from next week onwards. We'll bring some new people on, some new guests. So if you're interested, contact me, and you could be on this show and us interviewing you very, very soon. So take care from the wonderful Marilyn, from myself, from Sifu that's already picking up her kids, from the mighty Wolf and his dead battery, from it, and also from the Way of Conscious Mindfulness itself. Take care. Bye from now. Love, Qi and Shen. Bye, guys, and have a good, pleasant evening or afternoon.